G'day, how are we? Welcome to the first episode of the first series of this channel. I've spent the last 2 weeks videoing myself cutting, bending, bashing steel, and at no point did it occur to me to make an intro to this video. So here we are. What are we doing? We are attempting to make a broadsword. Now, what is a broadsword? You ask a lot of questions. You might think, like I used to, that a broadsword refers to this. However, that's wrong. But the main thing is that broadswords tend to refer to two things: cut-dominant swords with a complex or basket hilt, and the fencing style used to fight with them. The issue with this definition for me is that it covers an array of weapons as far back as 1550. So we need to narrow down what we're making. For this project, I've primarily drawn my inspiration from two sources. Firstly, 1750s era Scottish broadswords. They look like these. I really like the basket construction of these. The sheet metal makes it look really doable, and the rest of it looks pretty simple. I do have one complaint, however, and that is with the blade catches on the top here. Is not a cross. I much prefer fencing with a cross guard. As a result, the second inspiration comes from this. This, as far as I can tell, is an early era English broadsword. The plan is to make everything from the pommel to the top of the hilt a Scottish broadsword, but have a crossguard protruding through the top. That leads us neatly onto construction. How are we going to make this thing? The plan is to cut out a basket template from a piece of 3mm sheet metal. We'll then hammer and bend that into shape. And with any luck, it might end up looking something like this. The second thing that we're going to want to do is create a crossguard. In order to do that, we're going to want to book out some time at Everley Works, the local blacksmith, and hammer a piece of steel into shape. And with any luck, it'll end up looking like this. After that, we'll fit both of those to a blade, we'll weld them together, and start work on the pommel and the handle. The pommel's going to be made out of brass, and the handle's going to be made out of red gum. I think that's all our bases covered, so without any further ado, we'll get into the fabrication. The first thing we need to do is cut out the template, which will serve the basis for the hand protection. This took a number of days of just trial and error, but I finally found a design that I'm happy with. I do have to copy that bit over, I've forgotten about that. That's fine. So what we'll do is we'll stick this down onto the bit of steel that we have, and we'll start grinding. So we have the template roughly marked out on this bit of 3mm steel. So we'll start cutting that out right now. Alright, I did not anticipate how annoying cutting out the basket was going to be. I realized that the middle area and the fluting on the sides was going to get really gnarly, but even cutting out the big swooping arches in the bottom was an absolute nightmare. The whole thing required an ungodly amount of filing, even to get it into the roughest of shapes, let alone finishing it off. I actually ended up buying a jeweler's saw. It meant I could get into a lot of those really tight areas, especially the circles on the top left and right. If I'd used that from the start, it probably would have saved me a hell of a lot of time. Now, I didn't have the patience to film a lot of this stuff, but you're definitely going to see me using a jeweler's saw in a future video, especially when we get to the Mark III small sword and a rapier down the line. Okay, we have roughed out the template for the basket. Now we need to make the crossguard. So I've got this old bit of steel that I was practicing welding on. Cut that out and use that in the forge. Alright, so now we just have to mark up the middle, clean up the edges, and that should be ready for the forge. It's another day. We're going to be working on the crossguard for the basket hilted broadsword. We're here at Everley Works to do a bit of forging. For this one, the main thing I want to do is start from the inside out, because I am not good enough to predict how much length I'm going to get out of this mass. With any luck, doing that method, we'll be able to have a nice even length on this crossguard. I want to have about 10 inches in total, and any extra mass I'll just grind off. Here I'm forging the quillons out into a taper while ignoring the tip so that it stays nice and round. I also want to work on the bottom side way more than the top because I want the top to be flat to make it easy to weld, while the bottom side is nice and rounded so that when my hand is jammed up against it, it's nice and comfortable. And now I'm moving on to a poor attempt at upsetting the tips a little more. I was hoping to have more of a cone shape to the tips of the quillons, but I think this is a skill I'm going to have to work a little bit more on. Okay, so we have the base of the hilt kind of roughed out now. I've done the top of it flat with the underside of it rounded. Hopefully that will help me weld on the top while keeping the bottom side nice and rounded so that I don't mess up my hand on the bottom side. So next thing we're going to try and do is bend these into the right shape. I'm not exactly sure how long I should be bending it, but we'll give it a go and see what feels good. Do it by ear.
Alright, that's the final product from today's production. I think that could have turned out worse. Cool, time to chuck it in the basket. Let's go.
So we are back from the blacksmiths, and I really wanted to go over how great of a job I did on this crossguard. Absolutely nailed it. Now, I will say the ends of the quillons, a little bit phallic, but I think I can probably fix that either with a file or with a grinder. But all in all, absolutely frothing. Now that I have a different shirt from the intro, we should do a little bit of a wrap up. We managed to forge the crossguard for the blade. I think in the future, I want to remove a bit more weight, and I'll do that by reducing the height and by forging a more extreme taper on either side of the blade. We also got the basket roughed in. I think it's going pretty well so far. The issue I'm having now is that 3mm is a little too much to bend by hand, so I think we're going to have to bring it to the forge and bend this with a bit of heat. So for part 2, the plan is going to be bend this properly into shape, weld it to this, start cutting the handle, and then work on the pommel. With any luck, I should be able to get that done in the next week or two. In any case, thank you so much for watching. I hope you like and subscribe and stick around for the next one, and I'll see you then.